Bears. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them. There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Friggers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, we welcome you in live here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm Justin Kinner, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, and we got a ton to dive into here this afternoon. The Cincinnati Reds, their struggles of the season continue. Their struggles against the Brewers continue. They got game 2 coming up later on tonight, but the good news is they do have Hunter Green on the mound, and we'll talk about that more. Coming up here in just a bit, we talked a lot about Matt McClain yesterday and what the Cincinnati Reds should do with Matt McClain. Should he be sent to AAA, hitting 175 on the season, has had 186 at-bats, only has 30 hits on the season, 6 home runs on the season, really struggled. I mean, this is supposed to be a guy that, you know, I compared it yesterday. When you think about the Cincinnati Bengals, you talk about Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. That's the core. Well, who's the Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Reds? You would say, well, Hunter Green, Elly De La Cruz, and Matt McClain. At least that's what I would have said coming into the season. And now I'm questioning why we're putting Matt McClain in that. And last night proved, although wasn't in the lineup, there was a chance for Terry Francona to utilize Matt McClain, chose not to. And I think that shows you where we're at with the trust that the Reds, Terry Francona, and the fans have in him at this point in the season. We'll talk about that more coming up in a moment. Terry Francona just continues to seem to be more agitated the more and more he is questioned about the ongoing struggles with this team. And keep in mind, we are only 2 months in. We still have all of June, all of July, all of August, all of September. If Terry Francona has had enough with the media and the criticism 2 months in, what is the next 4 months going to do for a guy that was driven out of baseball due to health complications? What could this season bring to the table for the future of Terry Francona in Cincinnati? Could it be over before it even started? We'll get to all of that coming up. But the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Ways to interact with the show. We are live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. Go and check that out. It is shared over to ESPN Dayton's Facebook page, but I urge you to like and follow the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. Growing that page, that's where you can watch the show every day, starting at 3 o'clock. And then, of course, when you comment in the comment section, we then pull that into the show and interact with you that way. But I want to open up the show today, not with the Reds, not with baseball, but with the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals are a very, very interesting group as we head here into the 2025 season. Team OTA is going on right now. Of course, a lot of eyes are on Trey Hendrickson and the ongoing battle between him and the front office as far as getting an extension done. There's going to be a lot of talk about that. Shamar Stewart, the Bengals, first-round pick, that they selected, number 17 overall out of Texas A&M. He's built like Myles Garrett, but doesn't even come close to having the same type of numbers Myles Garrett in college. But the number that he is most concerned about is that rookie contract number with the guarantees that fits in line with what the Bengals had paid their previous first-round picks, picked later in the draft. He's picked higher in the draft, and yet they're trying to give him a smaller number. His holdout continues, or his hold in, if you will. To his credit, he is at OTAs. He is just not participating physically out on the field, very similar to what we saw with Jamar Chase last season. So with that being said, Pro Football Focus put out a ranking. They ranked all 32 NFL rosters, from the best roster, which was the Philadelphia Eagles, coming in at number 1, defending Super Bowl champions, not a surprise there, to the worst roster in the NFL, at number 32, the Cleveland Browns. I do have a problem with that, not because I'm a Browns fan, but because I think you look at that roster, I'm really having a hard time grasping how you can literally look at that and say that that's the worst roster in the NFL. As a Browns fan, that means every other NFL team has a better roster, which means if that was technically true, I should be able to look around the league and say, man, this roster is so bad, I'll take any other roster except this one. There are a handful of rosters that I'll take the Browns roster over, and we'll get to that coming up later on too. But the Cincinnati Bengals, when we talk about them, and I fall in the category of this as well, when we talk about Joe Burrow, it's not that I try to discredit what he does. I just don't give him as much credit as you guys, because I feel like the guy has a lot of help. I feel like the guy has a lot of weapons that Josh Allen doesn't have, that Patrick Mahomes no longer has, that Justin Herbert does not have. C.J. Stroud, although C.J. Stroud had it for a very quick second, a blink of an eye, injuries and everything else. We do have an update on a health concern for C.J. Stroud. I'll get to that momentarily as well. But Joe Burrow has something that nobody in the NFL has: 2 number 1 wide receivers. Dak Prescott has a very good wide receiver combo in CeeDee Lamb and, of course, now George Pickens, who they acquired from the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's a great wide receiver duo right there. They're not better than Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. T. Higgins would be a 1 on pretty much, I'd say, 65, 70% of the teams in the NFL? He's a number 1 wide receiver, and Joe Burrow has 2 of them. No other quarterback has that. But for the quarterbacks that don't have a Joe Burrow or a Jamar Chase / T. Higgins, what they have is an offensive line, a run game, a defense. I understand. I understand the counter arguments from Bengals fans when it comes to that. But this isn't about Joe Burrow. This isn't about the offense. This is about the roster as a whole. Pro Football Focus, again, putting out their rankings, their roster rankings heading into the 2025 season. Now that free agency is wrapped up, the draft is officially wrapped up. Everyone's had a chance to let these rosters breathe a bit. Pro Football Focus put up their rankings, and the Cincinnati Bengals come in at number 18. Now, the question I have for Bengals fans is this, and just football fans in general. If you're listening to this show and you're not a Bengals fan, that's fine. You're a football fan. Think about the Cincinnati Bengals. When you think about the Cincinnati Bengals, you have Trey Hendrickson, the NFL sack leader. You obviously have Joe Burrow, MVP caliber quarterback. You have the Triple Crown elite wide receiver, arguably the best wide receiver in football, in Jamar Chase. T. Higgins, another number 1 wide receiver. I mean, you have, Mike Gesicki. You go down the list. There's a lot of weapons on this team. Is this really the 18th best roster in football? I mean, you mean to tell me with all those guys I just mentioned right there that there are 17 rosters in football better than that? I mean, I'm not a Bengals fan. I'm not a Bengals homer. I'm a Bengals hater. But even I have a hard time really sitting here saying I would love, by the way, as a Bengals hater, as you guys like to call me, I would love to sit here and laugh in your face and say, see, you guys aren't as good as you thought. This roster is below average. This team is no good. You guys are very overrated. I think Pro Football Focus, with this, putting them at 18, I have no clue what to do with this. I want to use it to be a hater. I want to stir the pot. I want to piss you guys off. I want to get a reaction. But I don't think that there's a reaction to get. I think there's rational Bengals fans out there that hear this and say, yeah, I don't think our roster is that good. And I don't think that the Bengals roster is very good. I think that there's way too many question marks. And let me rephrase that. I'm not going to say that the Bengals roster isn't good. But I think when you have as many question marks that the Bengals have, if you have so many unknowns, how do you know what you have? So I think that being at 18, right there in the middle of the pack, is actually a pretty safe spot to be if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. You have Dax Hill. You have Logan Wilson. You have a lot of weapons on the defensive side of the ball with Trey Hendrickson. You go and you get a Shamar Stewart. You have Cam Taylor-Britt, who has been looking good in OTA so far. Like, you have guys. But when they've all been put together, even when you had Mike Hilton and you had the veteran pieces out there, there was still just something wasn't meshing, something wasn't clicking. Maybe it is a defensive coordinator change that was needed. Maybe Al Golden does come in, push a few new buttons, and the same guys that were part of the problem the last 2 years are now part of the solution moving forward. Who knows? But because there's so many question marks on the offensive line, I know a lot of Bengals fans, my guys on off the bench, they're big fans of Moss in the running back room, and they draft the kid from Texas Tech. Like, they're a fan of the guys in the running back room, but the Bengals have consistently been one of the worst running teams in football pretty much throughout this entire Joe Burrow era. The season that they were a top 10 running team in football was the season that they happened to go to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying it's necessarily just because of that, but I think it spoke to the fact that they had a very good defense and they were a more balanced offense. And then, of course, you had you had your special teams with Money McPherson, a heck of a field goal kicker, at least at that time. Heck of a kicker at the time. It was not very good last year. He's another question mark. So there is no hot take here. I don't have a hot take. It sounds weird saying that a roster with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, that there are 17 rosters better than that one. But remember, this is about teams as a whole. This is about who you are as a whole. And I sit here and I look at this roster and I want to be enamored with the big three. You could add Trey Hendrickson in there as well, maybe, if he even plays. I just am really curious to see how good is this Bengals roster. But do you agree? 937 518-1410, 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. Changing up the show format a little bit, going to be coming at you with quicker segments, more interaction, more opportunities and topics for you to call and interact with the show with. So the phone lines are officially open as we head into the break. The Cincinnati Bengals, Pro Football Focus, 32 NFL teams. They put out their roster rankings. The Philadelphia Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions, come in at number 1. The Cleveland Browns, who had the number 2 overall pick in this most recent NFL draft, was traded back to the 5 spot. They come in dead last. Pro Football Focus says they have the worst roster in the National Football League. And your Cincinnati Bengals come in right in the middle of the pack, sitting at 18. Do you agree? Are there 17 rosters better than your Cincinnati Bengals? The Dallas Cowboys ranked ahead of your Cincinnati Bengals. The Atlanta Falcons ranked ahead of your Cincinnati Bengals. Do you agree? 937-518-1410. We'll discuss more when we come back. This is the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers right here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. All right, and we welcome you back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Pro Football Focus, again, we opened up. We spent a lot of time on the Reds. We have Reds coming up. I have a lot to say about the Reds and what we saw last night. And it's not just what we saw last night. It's about the trends that keep continuing to just kind of basically convince me that maybe this team just is not – maybe what I thought this team could be, what I thought was deep down inside the DNA of this roster is just not there. And we'll talk about that coming up here in just a moment. Pro Football Focus put out a ranking of all 32 NFL rosters. The Philadelphia Eagles, of course, the defending Super Bowl champions that dominated the previous two Super Bowl champions and put an end maybe to the dynasty that is Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs, along with Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and company. Bottom line is, no surprise that they're number one. Cleveland Browns come in at number 32. You thought I was going to say number two. No, you didn't. You didn't think they're number two, but maybe. Maybe you thought that. But they're number 32. I disagree with that. I don't think that the Browns have the worst roster in football. I'm not saying that they have one of the top rosters in football, but look, it's tough defending the Browns because the Browns is the Browns. And that comment was made, I think it was Claypool a few years ago. They have a reputation, and every once in a while when you think that they're starting to improve that reputation, they just kind of remind you who they are. They're a mess. And we'll see if they dig themselves out of it. They're not the worst roster in football. They're just not. The Saints have a horrible roster. I think there's a lot of teams that are in much worse situations than the Cleveland Browns. But the Cincinnati Bengals come in at number 18. They are ranked 18th. They have the 18th best roster in football according to Pro Football Focus. 17 teams ranked ahead of them. And I know we did this topic on Off the Bench earlier today, and I think the most unique thing was it really wasn't interesting to me where the Bengals popped up on this list. It was the teams that were technically ranked ahead of them. Some of the teams that were ranked ahead of them that I disagreed with, probably the one that I thought was the most fascinating. The Chicago Bears. The Bengals come in at number 18. The Chicago Bears come in at number 17. Obviously, the Bears had to make a lot of changes in the offseason to their offensive line. They have very good weapons in the pass game. They could run the football, very good defense. But I don't know who the hell Caleb Williams is. I think the Bears are getting a little bit more of a push over the Bengals because of the fact that of the projection of what Caleb Williams can be. The Bears coming in ahead of them. I think right now, if I had to pick the roster, if I'm an owner and the Bears and the Bengals and a couple of these teams are available to buy, all right, and I'm a buyer and I want to buy one of these teams, are you going to buy the Bears roster or are you going to buy the Bengals roster? Even with all the deficiencies that the Bengals have, I'm taking the Cincinnati Bengals roster over the Chicago Bears roster because, look, as a Browns fan, I can speak to this. The Browns have pretty much had every piece to the puzzle over the last 3 or 4 years, except the most important piece to the puzzle, and that's quarterback. And then I've seen a team like the Bengals who has not been as well constructed. You guys can get mad at me all you want for this. The Bengals roster has not been better constructed than the Cleveland Browns over the last couple of years, but because they got the number one most important piece down, quarterback, they were able to overcome the deficiencies around. And I don't think Caleb Williams showed at all last year that he is good enough to overcome any deficiencies. On paper, they addressed the offensive line. Of course, locally here, we all know Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney, of course, added to the Chicago Bears roster. They were able to acquire him in the offseason. But again, that's great. Congratulations to Thuney, by the way. I mean, a championship pedigree. He's been a winner every single place that he has landed. Maybe that comes to an end in Chicago, and I'm not saying he's not a winner. Of course, he's a winner. He's a hell of a human being. I'm just saying this might be a little bit more of a headache than the last couple of NFL teams that he played for. You know, Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, now Caleb Williams, and the Chicago Bears. I don't know. But to me, I will take the roster. Although, and look, we've got in debates about this in the past, me and you, some of the Bengals fans. I thought the Browns had a better roster than the Bengals over the last couple of years. But because they didn't have the quarterback to bring it all together, it didn't matter. During the Joe Burrow era, the Browns have always had a better defense. During the Joe Burrow era, the Browns have always had a better run game. During the Joe Burrow era, the Browns have always had a better tight end. During the Joe Burrow era, the Browns have always had a better offensive line. Did I say defense already? If not, let me just go ahead and say it. During the Joe Burrow era, the Browns have always had the better defense, offensive line, tight end, linebackers, run game. There's two spots that the Bengals have trumped the Browns on, and that is, and by the way, I think the Browns have had the better head coach, but the Bengals have, in the Joe Burrow era, the quarterback and the number one wide receiver in football, or number two at the very least in Jamar Chase. So when I see a lot of these rosters ranked ahead of the Cincinnati Bengals, the reason I have a problem with it is because if you don't have a Joe Burrow, if you don't have a Josh Allen or a Justin Herbert or an elite level quarterback, you're not overcoming deficiencies. So I don't care if there are deeper rosters in the NFL than what the Bengals have. They don't have what the Bengals have in Joe Burrow. By the way, think about the Bengals. That's why they tick me off. You guys think I have hot takes when it comes to the Bengals. I don't. It's usually just common sense, but the Bengals are the exception to the rule. Now, hear me out. If I was to tell you that, hey, going into the season, name that team. This team can't run the football. This team has a crappy offensive line. This team has horrible special teams. This team had one of the worst defenses in the NFL. This team's a Super Bowl contender? You would say, Kinner, lay off the weed, dude. Put it down. Some of you might say, where do you get the good stuff at? Because that's a crazy take. A team that can't play defense, a team that can't run the football, a team that can't protect the quarterback, a team that has horrible defense, horrible special teams. You're going to tell me that is a Super Bowl contender? That would be the silliest thing ever. Except when you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, they are a Super Bowl contender. And their O-line stinks. They can't run the football. Monty McPherson stinks as well. Their defense is horrible. They had to go get Al Golden. They're a Super Bowl contender. And it irritates me as a fan of an opposing rival team in the Browns that how is it that the Browns, who have put together over the years way better defenses, way better offensive lines, have had a top 3 running back and run game in the NFL with Nick Chubb? 2-time NFL Coach of the Year. How do the Browns have all of that and can't win? The Bengals have none of these things at all, but yet they're a contender year in and year out. Now, I know it's weird because they've missed the playoffs the last 2 years. This is probably the nicest I've ever been about the Cincinnati Bengals, but the NFL is weird. And that's why it's strange when we sit here and we look at a ranking like this by Pro Football Focus. The Bengals have the 18th ranked roster in the NFL. But there's so many teams ahead of the Bengals that don't have the most important thing down, and that is quarterback. So let's look at some of these teams or walk through some of these teams as we wrap up this conversation. The Bears come in at 17. They don't have a quarterback. They think they have a quarterback. They don't have a proven quarterback. Same thing. The Atlanta Falcons come in at number 16. Are you really telling me that the Atlanta Falcons, do you really think that GMs and owners around football say, man, I really would prefer to have the Falcons roster than the Bengals? Come on. I wouldn't. And I'm a Bengals hater, remember? I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. If you're just joining us, welcome. The Dallas Cowboys come in at number 15. Now, I like Micah Parsons. All right. I like their offensive line. I'm okay with Dak. I'm not a Dak fan. I think that if you have Dak Prescott as your quarterback, I think you're always keeping an eye on the quarterback market. I think you're content with Dak Prescott, but I think you're always keeping an eye on the quarterback market. Whatever. Is that roster better than the Bengals? I'd say probably. But if you had to pick the Dallas Cowboys roster or the Cincinnati Bengals roster, who are you rolling with? I'm rolling with the Bengals. Continuing to go down this list, rosters, Pro Football Focus. This was strange, too. The San Francisco 49ers coming in at number 14. They dropped significantly. They lost a lot in the offseason. The Green Bay Packers coming in at 13. I don't mind them being ahead of the Bengals. I think they're more well-rounded. I still don't like Jordan Love more than Joe Burrow. But Jordan Love, the wide receivers, the offensive line, they're just more of a complete package. The Chargers interest me. The Chargers come in at number 12. They have the 12th best roster in football. I love their run game. They have okay pass catchers. That's something that I wish that they would kind of put more emphasis on, but when you have a defensive-minded head coach like Jim Harbaugh, it's kind of understandable why they don't go that route. They come in at number 12. The Commanders, got teams like that, no surprise. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield, I think, is the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. I think he's the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. I do not think he gets enough credit for the job he has done in Tampa, for the way he has turned his career around. What Baker Mayfield has done does not happen in the NFL. Now, you could say Sam Darnold. But Sam Darnold just threw for numbers that compared to Joe Burrow and compared to Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and his numbers were statistically great. And guess what the Vikings did? They traded him. They just moved. They let him go. They moved on from him. You have a quarterback that threw for 4,500 yards, close to 35 touchdowns, completed 70% of his passes, didn't turn the ball over. Those are impossible numbers to find. And the Vikings said, we're going to go with our rookie quarterback who missed all of his first season. Thanks, but no thanks. They moved on from him. Baker Mayfield put up massive numbers, and the Buccaneers gave him a contract extension. I think he's the most underrated quarterback in the NFL. When guys show initially that they don't have it, they usually don't turn around and show you that they do. Baker has done that. I don't mind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers being ranked as high as they are. The Denver Broncos got a lot of attention. Again, they run the ball, they block, and they protect the quarterback, one of the best defenses in the NFL, Super Bowl, Hall of Fame, worthy head coach. I have no problem with the Broncos being there, but nonetheless. All right, so again, if you missed it, the Pro Football Focus has the Bengals at 18. I do not think that the Bengals, sitting at 18, that there are 17 rosters better than the Bengals, but that's kind of where we're at. A lot of question marks, a lot of concerns. Something that we'll discuss more throughout the show and throughout the week. With that, the Bengals have the 18th best roster in football, according to Pro Football Focus, but is that roster good enough to win a Super Bowl? We'll discuss that coming up here shortly as well. 937-518-1410, 937-518-1410. This Bengals roster, it's number 18 in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus, but is this roster good enough to win a Super Bowl? We'll discuss that more in detail when we come back. Plus, we'll switch over to the Cincinnati Reds here shortly as well. The Reds last night, they told you twice that Matt McClain, that they've lost faith in him. They showed it by keeping him out of the lineup, and then an opportunity to use him late. They ended up sending some no-name dude out there with the game on the line. They told you twice yesterday that they have no faith in Matt McClain. We'll weigh in on that coming up here shortly as well. All right, we'll be right back. More of the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers next. All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. You just heard the ad. Shout out to one of our sponsors, of course, Titan Graphics. Titan Graphics takes care of us here at 1410 ESPN Radio with all of our apparel, all of our giveaways, promotional items, all of our signage, anything that we give out at live shows and everything. They are responsible for all of that, so we appreciate our partnership with them. But if you work in HR, business manager, a coach, any screen printing needs, they are your go-to. Titan Graphics. Make sure that you were giving them your business and we're referring you to them. We make sure you let them know that you heard it right here on 1410 ESPN Radio on the Justin Kinner Show. But they do. I told the story the week of my wedding. I had one job. My wife got tired of me getting in the way trying to help, so she just said, "You have one job. Just get the koozies for the reception. That's all you have to do." Week of the wedding. Forgot all about the koozies, but I kind of fibbed and said, "Yeah, I got it. No problem." I called Titan and said, I'm panicking. I was supposed to get these. They had it within 2 days. She was none the wiser. So there you go. So shout out to Titan Graphics. They got me out of a jam, so I appreciate them. But they very friendly, very helpful. Titan Graphics takes care of all your screen printing needs here in the Miami Valley. All right, Bengals. Last thing, we're wrapping up the Bengals conversation here today. The OTA is going on right now, by the way. Shamar Stewart in attendance, not participating, no Trey Hendrickson. So there's that. Not a surprise that Trey Hendrickson is not there. A little annoying, a little frustrating. But Shamar Stewart in attendance, but not stretching, not participating in drills, just there. I am curious, the longer that this plays out, which side the fans are going to take. Shamar Stewart's side, who, of course, was the Bengals' first-round pick, number 17 overall. And when that rookie contract comes in, not all contracts are the same. A lot of guarantees are different. A lot of teams give everything up front or a signing bonus, what have you. And some of the guarantees are different, injuries, all that stuff. Like they just want a little bit more security as far as that goes. And, of course, the Bengals always love to make things a little bit more difficult than they have to be. And when you look at the Bengals, who had their last 2 first-round draft picks were taken later in the first round, he is a guy that has taken. Shamar Stewart was selected higher in the draft, but yet is getting offered lower guarantees than first-round picks for the Bengals who were taken later in the draft the last 2 years. So when you hear that, I'm pro Shamar Stewart in that. Like, why are the Cincinnati Bengals making this more difficult than it needs to be? And if you are not comfortable giving him those guarantees because you feel like there are some question marks there, then that is a red flag in regards to you didn't make the right selection in the first round. I feel like with the first round pick, whoever you take, you should feel so excited about who you just selected in the first round that you just can't wait to, like rookie contracts, there's basically a scale. They're all relatively the same. It's just a matter of the guarantees. Like, what are you doing? I don't understand why everything has to be a challenge. And this was supposed to be a drama-free offseason. Maybe not up front. There was a lot of question marks heading into the offseason. Did we see the last of T in Cincinnati? We knew Jamar's deal would get done, but when would it get done? Would it bleed into camp? Would it lead to sit-ins, holdouts? Would it lead to more distractions there? No. They got T and Jamar both taken care of. It was a positive thing. It was like, okay, like a sigh of relief. A lot of weight had been taken off the shoulders of Joe Burrow and the front office and the Bengals organization as a whole, because now the offseason was going to be kind of boring. It was just going to be about hoping everyone is healthy, heading into camp, ready to go. And now all we've done since then is we've kind of forgot that Jamar and T got taken care of. That feels like that was done ages ago, because the Bengals are still dealing with the Trey Hendrickson drama, the NFL sack leader. Yes, he's on the roster. Yes, he's contracted to be a part of the Bengals in 2025, but he is threatening to sit out. He is threatening to miss games. Now, it's easy to talk big and tough and threaten to miss games when you're sitting in April, May, and early June. But when push comes to shove and you see the money that could be coming in, and then you're basically saying, okay, is my temper tantrum worth X amount, the $15 million that he's going to be paid this upcoming season, 16, whatever it is, I'll believe it when I see it. But that's going to be a distraction. You have Al Golden coming in, trying to bring and implement a new defensive scheme. It would be nice when a new defensive coordinator coming in, implementing a new defensive scheme, would have his number one defensive player out on the field for everyone to get acclimated and get into a rhythm, get into a groove. And now you're going to have the most important defensive piece not out there, most likely, to at least start the season, maybe games into the season, maybe the whole season. Who knows? Distraction. Shamar Stewart. This one shouldn't even be a distraction. By the way, I'm pro Bengals on how they handled the Trey Hendrickson thing. I don't think they should give him an extension. I think they need to stick to their guns in that particular situation. I don't think they should budge. They are wrong with the Shamar Stewart handling because, as I stated, if you are dragging your feet, not feeling comfortable giving him what he is asking for, when you have proven you're willing to give a player what he's asking for by giving the last 2 first-round draft picks that the Bengals have had more guarantees later in the draft, someone who's selected higher in the draft, this should be a no-brainer. And you don't want to give them those you don't want to give them those guarantees because I think that the Bengals don't trust Shamar Stewart. I don't think that they're completely bought into Shamar Stewart. And if you don't completely trust that Shamar Stewart's going to be a guy, if you don't completely trust that he is going to be a first-round caliber type of player, then why'd you even select him? That's the problem and the concern I have with all of this is it's leading to drama and those types of things. So when Pro Football Focus put out their rankings of all 32 NFL rosters and the Bengals come in at number 18, I've said before, I don't believe that there are truly 17 rosters better than the Cincinnati Bengals, but I understand why they're in the middle of the pack when there's so many question marks. But the bottom line is that the Bengals, who have been bad defensively, can't run the football, horrible special teams, bad offensive line, questionable coaching decisions and play calls, somehow, some way, they've been a 500 team the last 2 years. We talk about this team as if they are winning 3 or 4 games and missing the playoffs. They're finishing 500 and missing the playoffs. The AFC is very deep. The Bengals have missed the playoffs the last 2 years, finishing 9-8 in both seasons. One of those seasons without Joe Burrow for the back half of the season still finished above 500. Last season had Joe Burrow the entire season, finished above 500, 9-8, won their last 5 games, still missed the playoffs, doing all of that with one of the worst defenses in the NFL, the inability to run the football. They couldn't protect Joe Burrow again, even after all the money that they've invested into that. And then they have Evan McPherson, who is a proven kicker in high leverage situations, high pressure situations. We saw it in their path in their run to the Super Bowl where they ultimately lost to the Rams. But I've made the argument before, everyone gives Joe Burrow all the praise and the love for getting to that Super Bowl. Joe Burrow didn't get him to that Super Bowl. Evan McPherson did. He was responsible for 40 points in that playoff run. He's a proven kicker. He just disappeared last year, whether it's with the yips, whatever it is. And with all of those things and all of those question marks and you combine all of that coming into this season, all those deficiencies in the past, they've still been able to win 9 games. You win one more game the last 2 years. If the Bengals win one more game 2 years ago, they get to 10-7, they're in the playoffs. The Bengals finished 9-8 last year. 2 heartbreaking losses against the Ravens. A pass interference call against the Chiefs that I still feel is the right call. It was pass interference, but you guys disagree, but that's fine. But that thing doesn't happen. The Bengals beat the Chiefs. Evan McPherson hits those field goals against the Ravens. That's 3 more wins. But if you just win one of those 3, you're in the playoffs last year. You're in the playoffs. So even with all of those problems, the Bengals are a 9, 10, 11 win team, even without making any adjustments or changes from the last couple of years. But is this roster the 18th best roster in football, according to Pro Football Focus? That's below average. Is it good enough to win a Super Bowl? I think this bad roster, this roster with bad deficiencies was good enough to win 9 games the last 2 years. They really didn't make any changes. Their first round pick in Shamar Stewart, the front office is refusing to give him the guarantees that he wants because I don't even think that they buy in to the fact that they made the right choice in the first round. I think that they regret taking Shamar Stewart in the first round, and I think that's why they're hesitating on giving him everything he's asking, as I've stated before. So is Al Golden a big enough adjustment and change to get this same unit from the last 2 years to buy in and make drastic changes to lead the Bengals to where they want to go and ultimately get back to being a Super Bowl contender? I do not think that this roster is good enough for them to compete for a Super Bowl. I just don't. I think it's a cool story how they've been able to overcome a lot of the deficiencies, but at the end of the day, you're not winning a Super Bowl with these deficiencies. There's nothing out there in the history of football to prove that you could win a Super Bowl with a bad defense, no run game, no offensive line, and bad special teams. So for the Bengals to be a Super Bowl contender this year, Evan McPherson has to go back to being great. Al Golden has to turn this defense completely around. The offensive line that's been bad, although spent a lot of money on it, that's been bad. that has to magically just all of a sudden know how to block for Joe Burrow. The run game, which they've been horrible at running the football over the last 3-4 years, especially during the Joe Burrow era, they're just magically going to start being a good running team. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins are all good enough to overcome those deficiencies to win 9-10 games in the regular season. They are not good enough, though, to win a Super Bowl. You're not beating the Bills. You're not beating the Chiefs in the playoffs. You're not beating those high-quality teams in the playoffs. The Ravens. With all those deficiencies, you're not beating those teams in the playoffs. You can compete with them in the regular season. But come playoff time, no. You're not going to be able to. It's one thing, in the regular season when it's still semi-warm out and you want to beat the teams through the air. But, man, imagine a cold, wintry blizzard night where it takes away the pass game, and now you want the Bengals' bad defense, their inability to run the football. They can't protect the quarterback and bad special teams. Now that side of all those things have to go win you a football game. That's not happening. When the Philadelphia Eagles, when they can't pass the football, they could run the football and stuff you defensively, go win football games. The Kansas City Chiefs the last couple of years, they don't have a Tyreek Hill. Xavier Worthy's been out. They've missed some key playmakers over the years after moving on from Tyreek. It didn't matter because they could also run the football. They could also play the short game and just keep feeding the ball to their top tight end and punch you in the mouth defensively. Same thing, talk about the Eagles, talk about the Chiefs. All those teams are built to beat you different ways. The Bengals are built to beat you one. That's not a Super Bowl recipe. It's a good regular season recipe. It's like the Colts back in the day, with Peyton Manning. But, no, I don't think that this team's good enough to win a Super Bowl. Not as constructed as far as I'm concerned. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Let's talk Reds when we come back. All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Talked a lot about the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll have more on the Bengals throughout the week. OTA is going on right now. I haven't been able to follow up on some of these videos that Bengals media has released, but it looks like there's a lot of clips out there. T. Higgins addressing the media, Jermaine Burton. I think a lot of people did. We kind of wrote off Jermaine Burton last year. Like, hey, he was a bust last year. We never really got to see just how truly talented he is or isn't, just because of the attitude issues, which was, of course, a part of the red flags coming out of the draft. I mean, I did think it was a dumb move by the Bengals to draft Jermaine Burton. I think Jermaine Burton could play in the NFL. I just don't think he's in the right environment to be able to thrive. And here's why: the fact that he played for Kirby Smart at Georgia, the fact that he played for Nick Saban at Alabama. He couldn't correct his attitude and immaturity playing for two of the most legendary coaches in the history of college football. He couldn't get it together playing for the two best programs at that time in college football. But yet you want me to believe that he's going to go to Cincinnati for Zach Taylor and turn it around. I didn't have faith. I don't know how much faith I have in him and his ability to be able to do it now. He addressed the media earlier today. I'll kind of vet some of that audio and we'll dive into that. But I think if I'm sitting in front of Jermaine Burton right now, the questions I'm asking is, why, what is it? What is it that you have done that seems to have regained the trust of your teammates as they make their way, navigate through this offseason program? What has he done to regain the trust, or is he still doing something to regain the trust of the coaching staff? What did he learn? What mistakes did he learn from last year? What in Jermaine Burton's head, what went wrong? Because without us being at practice or knowing what's going on behind the scenes and all that stuff, like, we could speculate. I don't think it's hard to figure out what happened. I mean, the red flags were there coming out of college, but what exactly happened? What really went down? What truly led to the immaturity and the mistakes that he made? Does he really need an adult to constantly be checking in on him to say, reminder, you have practice tomorrow. Maybe you shouldn't be at the casino so late. Maybe you should, get home and get some sleep. You have a big game tomorrow. I'm wondering if you could sit across from Jermaine Burton and ask him, explain to us what went wrong. Explain to us why we are here right now, us having to ask these questions, question whether you are going to figure it out. Not even from a skill perspective. I think we can all agree the guy's pretty dang good from a skill perspective, but he can't get out of his own way. And I think that's a problem, because it's hard to feel bad for guys like Jermaine Burton, who had a prime opportunity to come in. Keep in mind, his role to come in, he was either going to be the replacement for Tyler Boyd, or he was going to be the ultimate number two to replace T. Higgins. I'm here to tell you right now, if I'm the Bengals front office, I can't stand Jermaine Burton. And here's why. The Bengals didn't want to pay T. Higgins. Jermaine Burton screwed everything up. Now, the Bengals did by drafting him. They shouldn't have drafted him. They should have taken other wide receivers. They could have done that. But if I'm the front office, I am seething at Jermaine Burton. I'm seething because he made you change course as far as the plan you had for the construction of the roster. That's the first part. And the second part is, I don't feel bad for people who are given a prime opportunity and squander it. And I think coming out of college, I mean, not just opportunities. You got to play for Kirby Smart in Georgia, a national championship contender. You got to play for Nick Saban in Alabama, a national championship contender. And your attitude got in the way. You couldn't figure it out for those two programs. By the way, he couldn't figure it out there. There was not even Ohio State. There's not a program out there that he was going to be able to channel his issues and put it to the side and go be a professional. There wasn't a program out there. And I don't even know if there's an NFL team out there that can also channel it and handle it as well. But maybe the Cincinnati Bengals get it. But I think the front office dislikes him because of that, because of the fact that he messed up. He had a prime opportunity, to play for those great coaches and programs. But to come into the NFL, Tyler Boyd out, he could have came in and been the legitimate number 3 option. He could have balled out and showed the front office that, oh, man, we love T. T is a fan favorite. We don't want to move on from T. Higgins. But we got a dude. We got a special guy here in Jermaine Burton. And it's going to make it a lot easier. Jermaine Burton cost the Bengals $30 million a year. because Jermaine Burton wasn't a professional and did not take advantage of an opportunity his rookie season to prove that he could be the number 2. You would have Joe Burrow. You would be playing alongside Jamar Chase, who would garner all the attention. You would be playing in an offense that is it's the most pass-heavy offense in the NFL. No one else passes the ball more than the Cincinnati Bengals. You would have eaten for days. And you would also have Joe Burrow throwing you the football. So I see a lot of people doing this. Oh, man, I feel, I'm pulling for Jermaine Burton, this, that. I'm not pulling for anything. I don't feel bad for him. He is his own worst enemy. He had an opportunity to capitalize and become the guy. And now he's fighting with Yoshivas. He's fighting with a tight end who's going to get looks at wide receiver like last year because they weren't deep enough at wide receiver. He had every opportunity in the world and couldn't capitalize. I don't feel bad for guys like that. I just don't. There's so many other wide receivers coming out of that draft that would have killed for the opportunity to play in an offense with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and even T last year. And he didn't capitalize on it. And now he's fighting for a roster spot versus sitting pretty, being a part of a Super Bowl contending Bengals team, at least from an offense perspective. Man, oh, man. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
apologize to Ryan Day. Everything we said about Ryan Day up into the playoffs was true. Not bad. Come on, Kinner. You can do better than that. To be fair, of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished.
All right, hour number 2, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. We are off and rolling here on a Tuesday. A lot of time, spent a lot of time on the Bengals in that opening hour. We just wrapped up a conversation regarding Jermaine Burton, who has addressed the media. I was able to kind of, during the break, again, a lot of this stuff coming while the show's going on, but Jermaine Burton addressing the media. And a lot going on there as far as a lot of questions that's being thrown his way about what went wrong in 2024. You were drafted to big picture be the replacement for T. Higgins, and that's my theory. In the eyes of the front office, that was the case, because look, I said for years there was no way in hell the Bengals were going to pay all 3. I said there was no way they were going to pay all 3 because that's not how the NFL works. That's not how NFL roster construction works. And just because the Bengals ended up doing it doesn't mean they made the right decision. They didn't. It's going to cost them. They've already shown their inability to be able to draft and develop at a consistent enough basis to be able to overcome such a big chunk and large amount of money going to 3 players all on one side of the ball. On the side of the ball that we act like, oh man, the offense isn't the problem. It's all defense. You can't run the football and you can't protect the quarterback. And you don't have a lot of depth. Like last year, they were relatively lucky. T. Higgins didn't miss many games, but that is always a big question mark with him, is his availability. There's that concern. But like, if Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, one of them has to miss significant amount of time, there's not a lot of depth at wide receiver. You could say, well, they have Yoshivas. I know every team, if they lose a wide receiver, there's a name of a wide receiver that's going to step up. Yoshivas is not a Super Bowl contending wide receiver. Let's just stop. It's a fun story. Fast runner, track star, all that fun stuff. He's a great story. He's not a Super Bowl. He's not a wide receiver that you're going to go to war with and give him a lot of looks and targets and convince me that you are a legit Super Bowl contender. That we could stop with that. That's not a thing. So they're fortunate that that's the case. What I think the Bengals wanted to do is, I don't think paying T was a part of their plan. Jermaine Burton was supposed to be the plan. And I'm not going to lie, as a Browns fan, when the Bengals initially selected him, I was aware of the red flags. I thought it was silly of the Bengals to take him, but I said, man, if it works out from a talent perspective, with Joe Burrow throwing him, by the way, he was a wide receiver that dropped many rounds in the draft. He was a first-round wide receiver. He was a first-round caliber draft pick. Jermaine Burton, if he didn't have the attitude issues, would have been selected in the first round. He dropped because of his issues. And the Bengals said, man, if we can get a first-round caliber talent that dropped in the draft, and this could be the most perfect seamless transition, go to battle this season. He's going to be the replacement for Tyler Boyd. That's super. Now you got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Jermaine Burton. Go compete for a Super Bowl. That's why T. Higgins, by the way, took the trade demand off the table last year, because he even told the media, I'm just going to sign the tender in June, because this is around the time that he signed the tender. Everyone last year was taken back by the fact that T. Higgins, even his agent wasn't a fan. His agent at the time, everyone kept telling T. Higgins, do not sign that tender. Put, the feet against the fire, the front office. You got to win this. He lost the negotiation. Technically would come back and ultimately win it, but he ended up caving and reporting to camp earlier, reporting to OTAs, because he didn't want to be a distraction on a team that had expectations to win a Super Bowl with Joe Burrow healthy and coming back. Trey Hendrickson, who demanded the trade last year, ultimately scrapped the trade request because, same thing, he didn't want to be a distraction. He wanted to be a solution to them winning a Super Bowl, not a distraction and a reason for why they didn't. And then ultimately it didn't matter because this team had a lot of problems to begin with. But man, oh man, T. Higgins, go to war with those 3. T. Higgins then leaves. Jermaine Burton moves over into that spot. He's now the number 2, and all the money that you did not spend on T. Higgins can now going to address the holes on the defensive side of the ball. I still feel like the reason that the Bengals front office ignored the defensive side of the ball from a free agency standpoint is because of T. Higgins. And I don't think that's a hot take. A lot of you believe it is. It's not. A lot of you think I'm hating here. I'm not. It's basic common sense roster construction. If T. Higgins was not on this roster, I do believe they go after some big name free agents on the defense. Not the biggest names, but they invest into the defense. They didn't invest in the defense because you guys basically pressured him into having to sign T. Higgins, and we'll see if it works. But Jermaine Burton, he's why T. Higgins is a Bengal. Jamar Chase blackmailed the front office into getting a deal done, so he played a role in that. Joe Burrow, went on the media tour, putting the pressure there. But ultimately, T. Higgins is a Cincinnati Bengal because of Jermaine Burton. And it's going to be up to Jermaine Burton to really elevate this offense, because if you get a legitimate, very good number 3 that's good enough to be a number 2, maybe one day down the road be a number 1, now that's a scary wide receiver. It's already the best 1-2 wide receiver combo in the NFL. It's still not the most dangerous wide receiver room, though, because they are one sneeze of T. Higgins away being out for weeks at a time, and there's just not a lot of weapons in there. It's not a very deep wide receiver room as far as that goes. Matthew Sense on Facebook, again, he's weighing in on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. Matthew says, I don't believe that Burton was the only reason why T. Higgins is a Bengal still. Bengals drafted 2 guys the draft prior that haven't necessarily taken the jump to become a legit number 2 either. I think a lot of those guys at the same time, too. I mean, look, but they weren't – Burton was drafted high, though. I know he didn't go in the first round. He was drafted high. Those other guys weren't drafted high. They were taking flyers out on guys like Yoshi and guys like that. They were taking flyers. I don't put them in that category. I don't think they were drafted with the plan. I think it was just maybe one of these guys hit. Like Puka Nacua with the Rams. Like, they were like, well, maybe he'll hit. He hit. Bengals got to get lucky like that. Like the Rams got lucky. They would have extended Cooper Kupp. They didn't want to extend Cooper Kupp. It was easy to move on from Cooper Kupp because you got lucky with Puka Nacua. And sometimes my favorite draft picks that you take a flyer out on, and then they end up becoming a star. And then you draft guys that you want to be a star, and then they don't pan out, and then it's a very stressful, frustrating situation. But we'll see. But yeah, Jermaine Burton addressing the media today, saying that multiple times he has thanked Jamar Chase and T. Higgins for taking him under his wing. I'm like, man, professional football player. I understood, like, people were mad at Jamar Chase last year for not going above and beyond to mentor him. And I'm like, okay, well, what's our definition of mentor? Like, what do we want him to do to mentor him? Because like, what a lot of you guys want is for him to be babysat. I mean, like, what does that mean, by the way? I do want to ask, Keith Byers will be in tomorrow. Keith Byers was a veteran. He played 13 years in the NFL. He mentored a lot of young players. I do need to ask Keith Byers tomorrow. I'm going to ask him. What does that mean to mentor a player? Like when Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are mentoring Jermaine Burton, what does that mean? What advice are they giving him? Hey, Jermaine Burton, don't show up late to practice. Oh, man, thank God you told me that, T. Oh, man, where would I be without T. Higgins telling me to be a professional? You know what I mean? Like, it's weird to me. This is the NFL. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but like, it's a privilege to play in the NFL. Only a tiny percent of people are even good enough to compete to play in the NFL. And this guy has an opportunity, and he's sitting here saying, man, thank goodness I have T and Jamar who have to remind me to work hard, who have to remind me to show up to practice, who have to remind me to study my playbook. That's weird to me. I know for me, for myself, I know you listening. Can you imagine if you had an opportunity to be in the NFL? Imagine if I had the opportunity to be in the NFL. I promise you this. If I had a chance to be in Jermaine Burton's shoes, I know for a fact I would not need a single human being in an NFL locker room to say, hey, Justin, remember, you need to work hard at practice. Hey, Justin, remember, to play, you need to know the plays. You need to study that playbook, pal. I think if you need mentored, that's a problem. This is the NFL. It's a cutthroat league. Professional sports is cutthroat. I don't know. I don't sympathize with that stuff, and I'm not taking shots here. I'm not stirring the pot. I don't sympathize with guys like that. Like, you have a rare opportunity to play professional football in the National Football League with Joe Burrow throwing you the football in a wide receiver room that has T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And instead of them practicing and preparing on the field to prevent this team from having a slow start, it sounds like they're over there cutting up his character and dapping his mouth with a napkin to make sure that he doesn't, like it's like, what are we doing? We'll see what happens. Jermaine Burton has the ability to be a special wide receiver and a weapon in that Bengals offense. But although it sounds like it's a feel-good story, I don't find it to be a feel-good story. If I would not need a teammate to tell me to play hard. I would not need a teammate to tell me to arrive on time to practice. I would not need a teammate to tell me to study my playbook. I wouldn't need any of that. So what I want to know is, if that's not what the mentoring is, what is the mentoring? What is it that they are doing to mentor him? Like, I feel like a lot of times we say just very weird things in sports that we don't really know what that means. What does, oh man, Jermaine Burton's going to be good. He's mentoring him. What? There's a lot of drama in Cleveland right now. Listening to Sports Talk in Cleveland, Joe Flacco upset a lot of Browns media because he said he was not a fan of the mentor role. He wasn't going to mentor Dylan Gabriel or Shador Sanders, nor should he. I don't believe any quarterback should mentor anybody. I mean, this idea, oh man, Patrick Mahomes is great because of the mentorship from Alex Smith. Patrick Mahomes is great because Patrick Mahomes is great. If Dylan Gabriel is good enough to play in the NFL, it's going to be because he's good enough to play in the NFL. It's not going to be because of anything a 55-year-old Joe Flacco told him. And I like Joe Flacco. I'm defending Joe Flacco. I just think we make up narratives in sports media and as fans, man, he needs to mentor him. No, he doesn't. You are an adult. You are a human being. You are an adult. You don't need a babysitter. You don't need a babysitter. Shador Sanders is going to either succeed or fail, and it's not going to be because Joe Flacco didn't mentor him, or he won't succeed because Flacco mentored him, and he won't fail because Flacco decided not to mentor him. Flacco's goal when he signed with the Browns was to go compete for the starting job. Hey, you want me to mentor you? Hey, the interception you threw, try throwing it to the guy wearing our jersey. Like, what's mentorship? I don't know what that means. I just don't. I don't know. And by the way, I do think that, like, Joe Flacco is not saying that, hey, while Shador and these guys are up doing their drills, hey, when you threw it this way, make sure you're looking at this angle here. Make sure you're looking at this route over here. Like, Flacco's going to do that. That to me is the mentorship thing that you're looking at. He's not saying he's not going to be able to provide some kind of advice or just like a a suggestion for an improvement or this, that, or the other. I don't believe in that theory of mentorship. I just don't think that's a thing. You either have it or you don't. I don't think that athletes need to have someone tell them, show up to practice on time, open up that playbook, work hard. And if you do need that, you're not a professional. And that's what the NFL is. And it's professional football. The NFL is professional football, and you have to be a professional. And if you're not a professional, you're vulnerable to what's happened to Jermaine Burton. Shador Sanders, I don't feel bad for him. All his Deion crying to the media. It hurt him about all the stuff that it hurt him to hear that Shador Sanders came to a meeting unprepared. Well, did he? Did he come to a meeting unprepared? Sounds like he did. Be a professional. If Shador Sanders was actually a professional, he doesn't drop 5 pounds. And I'm pulling for. I want him to be the guy in Cleveland. But I also don't feel bad for him either. Like, I'm pulling for him to be the guy in Cleveland, but I don't feel bad for him dropping in the 5th round because of all the reports that came out about the way he carried himself. You mean to tell me that every report was a lie? You mean to tell me that a super, really talented quarterback that is good enough to win you football games, which is how GMs keep their job, which is how head coaches keep their job, which is how owners pay the bills. You mean to tell me that the league as a whole, knowing how the league works, said, man, Shador can lead us to a Super Bowl, but man, I don't like the way he wore his hat. Let's let him drop. All right, let's call the other team. Hey, this Shador guy coming through, man, yeah, his dad, I don't like him. Make sure we just keep letting him drop. No. There's way too many people that their careers are on the line to just let a super talented quarterback drop like that. And if Shador ends up being the guy, all right, we can have that discussion later. I just don't believe that anyone just let him fail because they were blackballing him or because there was collusion or whatever the crybaby excuse that people are using to talk about Shador at this point. I want him to succeed in Cleveland. I will buy his jersey if he ends up being named the starting quarterback. I will be a Shador fan in Cleveland if I have to. But everything that I was concerned about, why I wasn't a fan of him coming to Cleveland to begin with, is played out at this point. But the only other thing that can happen now is him actually be good enough to play. And if he's not, oh well, they try to tell you. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll switch over to the Cincinnati Reds. Reds Brewers, game 2 tonight. Hunter Green on the mound. Can the Reds end their struggles against the Brewers at least for one night? Last night, Terry Francona, though, for those who are worried about Matt McClain, like I am, I think Matt McClain has been very bad. I think they need to send him to AAA. Terry Francona and the Reds had 2 opportunities last night to show you that they still believe in him, and 2 opportunities that they let just go out the window. They told us last night they don't have faith in Matt McClain. I'll tell you why when we come back. All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show here on a Tuesday, 4:20 here in the Miami Valley. Hour 2 of the show. We do got Reds baseball tonight, game 2 between the Reds and the Brewers. Reds have lost 3 straight. They lost the final 2 games against the Cubs coming out of the weekend. They lose 3-2 last night, game 1 against the Brewers, game 2 tonight. Hunter Green going to be on the mound. Reds will be in action tomorrow afternoon. Let me give you that exact first pitch time here. I don't know why I forgot. I've been saying the start time all day. I'm completely spaced on it. Where are we? We're already in June. This is wild. So, yeah, 7:10 tonight, 12:40 will be the first pitch tomorrow right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Reds looking to wrap up that series with the Brewers. Off day Thursday, and then they start another tough series with the Diamondbacks coming up on Friday. We talked about the month of June is a gauntlet. The Reds, I mean, just absolutely brutal schedule in the month of June. Absolutely brutal. Obviously, they games 2 and 3 with the Brewers, who they've had no success against them for the last 4 years, and then carried into this season. You got the Diamondbacks this weekend. Then you got 3 with the Guardians in Cleveland. Detroit, arguably the best team in the American League, probably top 3 team in baseball. You got to go play at Detroit. Minnesota, 500 team. St. Louis, well ahead of the Reds in the standings right now, way better than we thought that they were going to be. Then you got to play the Yankees, and then you got to play the Padres. Then you got the Boston Red Sox in Boston in July. Then you got the Phillies. I mean, the season could be done by then, but they do have a nice little stretch heading into the All-Star break. They have, 4 with the Marlins at home and then 3 with the Rockies, the 2 worst teams in baseball, back-to-back. 7 games heading into the All-Star break. Will the Reds be one of the worst teams in baseball, viewed as that with those 2 teams by the time we get there? It's a gauntlet and just brutal schedule, nonetheless. We are live here on 1410 ESPN Radio, live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. Theo Mims messages into the show. What up, Theo? Theo says, I totally disagree with you on the Shedeur Sanders narrative. Theo, I'm going to have to ask you to elaborate or call in 518-1410. What part do you disagree on? And like sometimes when we try to say, oh, the narrative, a lot of people try to I don't think there's a narrative about Shedeur Sanders. I just think Shedeur Sanders is Shedeur Sanders. You know, Shedeur Sanders, yes, has won everywhere that he has gone, but Shedeur Sanders is a guy that dropped into the 5th round because there's some mechanical things with his ability to throw the football that doesn't seem to match the NFL. Again, this is the National Football League. GMs have to draft and take the talent that's going to help them win or they get fired. Coaches are going to pressure GMs to take the quarterbacks that are going to help them win because if they don't, they get fired. Owners want to make money. They want their teams to win. They spend billions of dollars on these NFL teams. They are not going to pass up on a quarterback that is going to win them football games because this is the investment. Nobody is colluding against Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders and his father, Deion Sanders, have done everything they can to be exactly what we have known the NFL to be against for a long, long time, and that is anybody that is a distraction. That's not collusion. That's common sense. It's the same thing at your workplace. And if Shedeur was like legitimately good, you'll take the good with the bad. You'll take the noise. I've always said, is your talent worth the noise? I hope Shedeur is good. I want him to be the guy. I think that he would bring an energy to Cleveland that they haven't had since Baker, and I think they regret not letting Baker bake and cook and be good and be patient. They went the Deshaun Watson route, which I won't be a hypocrite. I thought it was the right move at the time. It was the wrong move based on results. I don't think it was the wrong move at the time. I still stand by that. I think it was the right move at the time. Nobody in their right mind could have guessed that this was going to happen. You guys wanted it to happen. There's no way that anybody knew that Deshaun Watson, who was a top 5 quarterback 2 years prior, was just going to be a bottom 5 worst quarterback in the NFL just a few years later in his mid-20s. He's won everywhere he's gone. That doesn't make that. None of that made sense. But that's not what we're talking about here. Shedeur Sanders, teams passed on him because his dad talks a lot, and that's a distraction. Shedeur Sanders was cocky and arrogant. Oh, well, Baker Mayfield's cocky and arrogant. Yeah, teams didn't like that either. Teams don't like that. And that's not, in my opinion, it's not a race thing. It is simply an athlete thing. Baker Mayfield, he has light pigmented skin, and he was a very cocky and arrogant dude. Now, you could say, well, he ultimately went number one overall. Baker Mayfield is a Heisman winning quarterback. Baker Mayfield is a way better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders, but teams are going to take a gamble on on Baker Mayfield because his talent was worth the noise in college. But his talent in the NFL ultimately was not initially up front good enough to withstand the noise, and they went, and that's why the Browns went a different direction. So it is what it is at this point. I don't feel bad for Shedeur Sanders. I mean, this pity party. I mean, think about this, like the prank call, everyone was like talking as if we were talking about Shedeur Sanders' funeral. Shedeur gets drafted in the 5th round, and he was at one of the most glamorous parties I've ever seen in my life. And I'm supposed to feel bad for that guy. I didn't feel bad for him. He got drafted. He's getting compensated. He's going to get an opportunity. And if he doesn't get the starting job or ultimately doesn't make the Browns roster, it's because he's not good enough to be a quarterback in the NFL. The NFL doesn't just move on from talented quarterbacks like that. They just don't. GMs need good quarterbacks to keep their job. Head coaches need good quarterbacks to keep their job. Owners need good quarterbacks to get the most out of their investment, which is their NFL team. This idea that teams just passed on him to pass on him, to teach him a lesson and to get back at Deion. By the way, and why does everyone talk about Deion like he's not a likable guy? Deion is one of the most recognizable figures in all of sports. Deion has always been a likable figure. He's always had the charisma. He's always had a likable quality to him. I've never once disliked Deion Sanders, and I don't think he's a dislikable guy. I think it's like it drives me nuts when Deion says, "Well, they don't like my kids because of me." No, that's not true. I want the kids to be as good as you. I think that the reason that people are out on the Sanders kids, like I heard Deion did an interview recently where he said something along the lines of, Shiloh and and Shedeur both got punished in the draft because of who their father was. What are you talking about? In what universe can someone as talented and likable as Deion be that delusional to think that he's not likable? The NFL loves prime time. They love Deion Sanders. Why would they hate him to the point where they don't want to draft his kids if they're so talented? Shiloh Sanders is not that good. That's why he wasn't drafted. He made a roster. Good for him. And why did he make a roster? Because of his last name. The quarterback that drops to the 5th round that has a lot of question marks ultimately ended up getting drafted. Why? Because of his last name. This idea that the NFL hates Deion, it's embarrassingly silly. And if there are qualities about Deion that rub teams the wrong way, it is because of the stress that comes with if you take Shedeur and it doesn't work out, there will be a coaching change and Deion will be the next head coach. I still feel very confident that Deion Sanders at some point in the future will be the Cleveland Browns head coach. He will be. Kevin Stefanski is going to get a grace year this year where it's going to be Flacco to start. We're going to see glimpses of Shedeur Sanders look very, very good probably. This is how I envision the timeline unfolding. The Browns will win 7, 8 games, maybe 9 as the ceiling. They'll miss the playoffs. And then next year, when you think that they're about to take off, Shedeur will look solid at times, inconsistent at times. And then Kevin Stefanski, they would have had enough. They will fire Kevin Stefanski. And then guess what? Deion, primetime, Cleveland, new head coach, coaching his son, which is something he has said he's wanted to do. But that is why coaches around the NFL didn't want Shedeur at that point, too, because they knew he's not good enough to guarantee that I'm going to keep my job. And him coming in when I don't win with him not because, he's not good enough. It's because I screwed him up probably. Deion's going to come in and save the day. We all know how this is going to unfold. This isn't collusion. This is just a distraction. It's a mess. It's a circus. It's chaotic. It's not what NFL teams want. I don't know why this is so hard for people to understand. Deion's not a victim. Shedeur is sure as hell not a victim. The Sanders family is not a victim. I mean, they're one of the most popular families in the history of sports. Deion's one of the best athletes, if not the best athlete in the history of sports. Like, what are we doing? The NFL doesn't hate Deion. Fans don't hate Deion. Shedeur, people might dislike Shedeur because he thinks he's Deion, and he's not. But he has a chance to prove that he's capable of it, and he can do that with the Browns. And part of me hopes that he can. So it is what it is. But either way, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show. All right, now we'll talk Reds. My apologies. I keep getting distracted by the chat. My apologies. The Reds, Brewers tonight. Last night, the Reds, they showed me twice that they don't trust Matt McClain. Twice. The Reds did two things yesterday that have convinced me that they are slowly giving up on Matt McClain. I'll tell you why next. All right, we can talk some Reds now. 1410 ESPN Radio, Dayton's radio home for Cincinnati Reds baseball. Game 2 tonight, 7:10 the first pitch. Hunter Green going to be on the mound as the Reds look to snap their 3-game losing streak. And, of course, losing last night 3-2 the final against the Milwaukee Brewers. And the Reds have really struggled over the last 4 years against the Brewers. I mean, it's just the Brewers have owned the Cincinnati Reds. Let's just put it that way. But the Reds have a lot of problems. Like they put 2 runs up on the board last night, you lose 3-2. And we were talking about this on Off the Bench earlier today. It was one of those things where, in basketball, in basketball, there's some teams that could be down 10 and it feels like you're down 20. And then there's teams that could be down 20 that you only feel like they're down 10 because you know that they're so explosive offensively they can come back. The Reds are one of those teams where when they're down a run, I feel like they're down 5 runs because of their inability to be able to consistently put pressure on opposing pitching, especially late in games. I came across this stat last night that the Reds are top 5 in baseball in innings 1 through 6 in runs per game at about 3.38 runs. They average about 3.38 runs per game in the first 6 innings. They're top 5 in that category. They are at the very bottom of Major League Baseball in innings 7, 8, and 9. They average just a hair over 1 run a game in the final 3 innings. The Reds are 0-24 when they trail after the 6th inning. So if the Reds trail at any point in the 7th, 8th, or 9th, they've lost this season. 0-24. And a lot of it has to do with their inability to produce runs late in the game. Because I was trying to figure out what is necessarily going on that is leading to a lot of these losses coming so, their inability to be able to come away with wins in these close games. The Reds have a lot of close games because they have really good starting pitching. They hold teams to low run scoring productions. But the problem is the Reds don't have enough offensive firepower to be able to take advantage of that. They are squandering so many opportunities this season. They are squandering so many great opportunities from the pitching, from their starting pitching. They are squandering it all. I said that the Reds may not lead the league in losses on Off the Bench earlier today. I said they may not lead the league in losses, but they truly lead the league in squandered opportunities. From their 1-run games, they're 5-10 in 1-run games this season. From the fact that they had a stretch where they lost 3 straight games 1-0. The talk of all of that was the fact that they got shut out in 3 straight games. To me, the talk should have been, wow, you held an opponent to 1 run for 3 straight games and you came away with 0 wins. Squandered opportunity. You've played the Pirates a total of 6 times and you missed Paul Skeens in all 6 of those, and you're 3-3 against one of the worst teams in baseball in the Pirates. Squandered opportunity. Last night, down a run, bottom of the 9th, at home against a division opponent, and you have the number 9 batter coming up. All right, it was not a good situation for the Cincinnati Reds to be in last night, but there they were. There's Hampson coming up, who's hitting 167, bottom of the 9th. Terry Francona. He has Matt McClain on the bench. He has Matt McClain in the dugout. All he has to do is pinch hit in that situation. Hampson is hitting 167 on the season, and Francona did not pinch hit Matt McClain for Hampson. He felt more confident in Hampson's ability in that moment. Bottom of the 9th, by the way, also had Austin Wins. Okay, we'll talk about that in a moment. Squandered opportunity. You had Austin Wins, one of the Reds' best hitters. You just didn't go to him. You had Matt McClain. You didn't go to him. Squandered opportunity. The Reds have squandered opportunities all season long, and it is beyond frustrating. And as I teased a little bit ago, the Reds have to get more from Matt McClain. And I said I spent a lot of time on this on yesterday's show. We spent a lot of time on it on Off the Bench. The Cincinnati Reds need to demote Matt McClain and option him back to Louisville. He needs to go to the Louisville Bats. He needs to be sent down to the minors for him to figure out that swing, for him to figure out his timing, for him to figure out his offensive game, because it's just not there. I complained about Matt McClain yesterday because I hear so many people say, well, Matt McClain is not the type of talent that you send down to the minors. Says who? We talk about Matt McClain as if he is an established veteran all-star. He is none of those things. He has missed more games than he has played. He has yet to even get to 162 games in his career. And he has had way more bad outings than good outings. He's hitting 175 on the season. Only 6 home runs in 180 plus at bats. He has 6 home runs in 180 at bats. He has, what's the strikeout total? 65. Yeah. In 180 at bats, he has struck out 65 times. He's not good. So last night, I'm looking at this situation. I'm like, Hampson is up. He's hitting 167, down a run against the Milwaukee Brewers, bottom of the 9th, game on the line. And Terry Francona does not go to Matt McClain on the bench to pinch hit. He would rather go with the guy hitting 167. That's how little faith he has in Matt McClain. Also yesterday, while complaining about the Reds and refusing to send him to the minor leagues, They scratched him from the lineup yesterday. I thought, oh, here we go. It's going to be a phantom injury. Now, the lineup, I don't believe, has come out for tonight. Let me check that because by this time yesterday, the Reds lineup was out. So let me go check this now while we're live on the air. I'm curious if he is. Okay, so they put it out about an hour ago, and there is McClain's back in the lineup. This is ridiculous. Matt McClain needs to be sent to the minors. Needs to be sent to the minors. Last night, the game on the line, you could have pinch hit Matt McClain. You chose not to. You didn't trust him in that situation, but you trust him to keep giving him at bat after at bat after at bat. This McClain thing is getting really ridiculous. It really is. He is not a good enough player. He has not done enough in his career to warrant being given opportunity after opportunity without being sent to the minors. Will Benson, remember when he was called up early in the season? He went 0 for 4. They got pissed and sent him back down. But you get 30 hits and 180 plus tries, and they're like, oh, keep swinging, buddy. You'll figure it out. That's ridiculous. I don't know if that's a Nick Craw and Brad Meter decision. Nick Craw, president of baseball operations, Brad Meter, the Reds general manager, or is it a Terry Francona decision? I don't know whose decision it is to continue keeping Matt McClain on this roster right now. But last night, it was Terry Francona's decision to not use him in the bottom of the ninth with the game on the line and continue to roll with the guy hitting 176 or 167. That to me said everything. That showed me everything I needed to know. Everyone was ripping Terry Francona last night. Why would you bat Hanson last night in the bottom of the ninth? Why would you not go to Matt McClain? I said, why is everyone mad at Terry Francona for that decision? I don't mind the decision. Terry Francona was telling me and you and all of us Reds fans what I've been saying. Matt McClain is not a good hitter right now, and they don't trust him. They do not trust him. But then if you don't trust him for him to hit and pinch hit in that particular situation last night, but then the very next day you go put him in the lineup, what is going on? At what point? What's the average that he has to get down to? What is the horrible performance that he has to actually put on for them to say, all right, we need to send him to the minors? Matt McClain has never made an all-star game. Okay? He's never been in MVP voting. He has never once come close to looking like that of Ellie De La Cruz, but yet he gets treated like Ellie De La Cruz. And I gave this example yesterday. I remember there were multiple stretches over the final 2 seasons of Joey Votto. I went and counted. I went and found this yesterday after the show. The final 2 seasons of Joey Votto, there were 6 stretches where Joey Votto went 0 for 20 or more. 0 for 20 or more. That's a lot of games to go hitless. And I remember complaining that David Bell just kept putting him in the lineup. But at least David Bell, who continued to put Joey Votto in the lineup night after night after night without an off day while continuing to slump. At the end of the day, David Bell could at least rest on the fact that that's Joey Votto. We know what he's capable of. We know that he's not this guy. Keep him in there. And I agree with that idea. I'm fine with that. I was never once saying, hey, send Joey Votto to the minors. No. I just got annoyed with continuously keeping him in the lineup. 6 stretches. There were 6 different 20-plus game stretches in the final 2 years of Joey Votto where he went hitless. That's a problem. But they kept putting him in the lineup. But at the very least, it's because you knew it's Joey Votto. Like, this is just not right. Him not getting a hit in this many consecutive games. Like, we know what he's capable of. He's fine. I was frustrated with that, but I understood the logic. I don't get the logic with Matt McClain. Matt McClain's not Joey Votto. Matt McClain is an unproven talent. This is his 3rd season in Major League Baseball, and yet he has still yet to play a full 162 games. He missed all of last season. I'm repeating yesterday's topic and show with this. I get that, but there was just that situation last night that showed me Terry Francona did not trust Matt McClain in that spot, but yet the lineup comes out an hour ago and he's right back in the lineup. What are we doing? Matt McClain is horrible. He needs to be in the minors right now. He does not need to take another at bat for the Reds until he figures it out in AAA. I'm over it. I'm over it. I'm going to boo my TV or wherever I'm at tonight when the Reds game is on. If I'm out mowing, listening to it on the radio, I'm going to boo when I hear his name come up. If I'm fortunate enough to be inside with the game on, it's on MLB Network today, by the way, for those who are going to watch it on TV. I'd rather you listen to it on 1410 ESPN Radio. But the bottom line, I'm going to boo. Then you should boo. Everyone needs to boo. Matt McClain is not good. He's not good. He's overrated. I want him out of the lineup. He's hitting 175. He's been, and it's not like he was just called up after an injury last week and he's hitting a low average. This is a guy that has had 180 plus at bats. He has 32 for 183 on the season. He has 32 hits on the season. He's gone to the plate 80 times. He has more strikeouts than hits. In fact, he has double the amount of strikeouts as hits on the season. He has struck out 65 times. He only has 32 hits. It's unacceptable. But yet he keeps getting put in the lineup every single day. I don't understand it. Is what it is. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers right here on 1410 ESPN Radio, 937-518-1410. Man, oh man. We'll be right back. right, and we are back. The Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Reds and Brewers, game 2 tonight. Hunter Green on the mound. Let's see how all that plays out. As the Reds look to end a 3-game losing streak. Coming up here later on this evening, 7:10 the first pitch, 6:40 coverage will begin right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Buckeye fans, I don't know if you guys saw this, but CJ Stroud, we earlier in the show, we were talking about Pro Football Focus had put out their rankings of their roster rankings, and the Bengals, according to Pro Football Focus, had them at 18, which means Pro Football Focus believed that there are 17 better rosters than the Bengals, right? And the Houston Texans are one of those. And the Houston Texans have very good pass catchers, obviously a very good quarterback in CJ Stroud. They added Joe Mixon last year. Their run game is top-notch, and we know how good that defense is. And they have D'Amico Ryan, again, the head coach, defensive-minded head coach. They're very well-rounded. However, there is a lot of concern coming out of Houston Texans OTAs right now because, well, CJ Stroud was not participating at OTAs. And there's a lot of players who don't show up to OTAs. They're voluntary. Well, CJ Stroud was at OTAs. He just wasn't participating in OTAs. Something to be concerned about? Maybe, maybe not, until, of course, their head coach is asked about it. And, well, D'Amico was asked whether CJ Stroud had work done on his shoulder this offseason. The dreaded no comment was made. CJ Stroud with a hurt shoulder. Keep in mind, he hasn't played football in months. What could possibly have been done at any point recently, since his last game back in January, for him to be out of OTAs? Like, he's not reporting to it. I know it's voluntary. He's there. He just can't participate. His shoulder hurts. That could be a problem. The Texans are one of the 17 teams that have a roster, according to Pro Football Focus, that is better than the Bengals. And I thought last year that the Texans would have been better than the Bengals, and were technically. CJ Stroud regressed a little bit last year, maybe that sophomore slump. I was expecting more out of the Texans. Obviously, we didn't get that. But that could be a concern if CJ Stroud doesn't play this upcoming season for the Houston Texans. Or, man, can you imagine, though, by the way, because we still get another year of Jeremiah Smith. Can you imagine if CJ Stroud would have missed this upcoming NFL season, the Texans would have had a top draft pick, and then they end up drafting Jeremiah Smith? How unbelievable that would be, but that won't be the case. We still have 2 more years of Jeremiah Smith, thank goodness. But either way, I'm really hoping CJ Stroud's not hurt. I'm hoping that's not a big deal. But yeah, if that would be the case, and I'm not celebrating an injury to CJ Stroud, but from a Bengals perspective, that's one less loaded AFC team that they would have to navigate and fight through. But CJ Stroud, the Texans, been a feel-good story over the last couple of years. Definitely won that trade with the Cleveland Browns. Of course, that was part of that Deshaun Watson swap. But my goodness. Yeah, hopefully everything's good as far as that's concerned. Coming up in hour 3, we highlight a couple segments from Off the Bench from earlier today. Chase Burns, the Reds' number 1 pitching prospect, was compared and viewed as Paul Skeens-esque coming out of college. He is dominating the minor leagues right now. He dominated in Dayton, got a quick promotion over to Chattanooga, dominating in Chattanooga right now. Everyone is wondering, why is he not in Louisville? Could we see him at the major league level? Nick Cross says no. That will not be the case. That there's still a couple things that they're looking at with him. What the heck could they be looking at? We discussed why Nick Kroll, president of baseball operations, is against the idea of Chase Burns being promoted to Louisville, not even to the Reds. We're just talking to Louisville. We discussed that. We jump back into the conversation, of course, with Pro Football Focus's roster rankings, all of that coming up next.